The world came to an end. But the story didn't stop there. What we once called humanity has become something else. A civilization rebuilt upon ruins, blood, and silence. Faith was inverted. Truth was rewritten. And what was once considered sacred was captured, mutilated, and turned into the very engine that sustains this new world order. For years, the angel Uriel has remained crucified inside the angel engine, reduced to an eternal source of energy for a utopia that never asked to exist, and that in the end could never truly be. In this world, humanity no longer prays to God, it prays to the man who betrayed him. But his image, his message, and his legacy are nothing more than the mask of the true architect behind this blasphemous and impure religion. And so, once again, we return to Angel Engine to narrate, explain, and analyze the new episodes released since last time. If you've never seen anything from this analog horror series, I highly recommend checking out the playlist that's appearing on your screen right now. You'll also find it linked in the description. That said, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who responded to the pinned comment in the last video and for the incredible support you always give me. And of course, I want to give a special thank you to Cubilo02 and Letter for the donations. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Remember, if you'd like to be featured in the next video, make sure to reply to the pinned comment where you'll find this question. What do you think awaits the hero at the end of his journey? Without further ado, don't forget to leave your precious like and subscribe to help the channel grow and reach more people. Every like is one more coin to escape poverty. If you're unsure what to comment, just type meow in the comments section and I'll give you a heart in return. Comments are incredibly important and help the video a lot, so don't forget to leave yours. Welcome back to Angel Engine. This first episode is, without a doubt, the sinister continuation of where we left off in the previous video. We return to this devastated world, now entirely rebuilt under a logic that opposes the divine. Humanity, once desperate for a miracle, has instead forged its own profane and blasphemous religious system, an inverted faith. And the episode makes this clear from the very first moment, opening with a piece of state propaganda framed as spiritual guidance, presented in a distinctly analog horror aesthetic. We're instructed not to listen to the saints, not to believe in any divine figure that attempts to reach us, because, according to them, they're liars. And if those voices persist, we're ordered to seek out the local priest, who will offer a supposed blessing meant to silence them. From there, we're told to direct our prayers to the Savior Ernstmann, presented as the one and only Redeemer, and ultimately, to accept the mark of the beast when the time comes. This guide is the direct manifestation of the anti-God system we already discussed in the previous video. The insistence on rejecting the saints and demonizing any contact with the divine is proof of that. At the same time, the proclamation of Ernstmann as the Messiah of this order places him symbolically and practically in the role of the Antichrist, though, as we've theorized, it may not be Ernstmann himself, but rather the great deceiver speaking through him. Humanity has embraced, with devotion, the very thing that is damning it, convinced it is being saved. The next scene is devastating. We find ourselves in a classroom filled with children, with the one we unofficially know as the hero sitting in the front row. These are generations who, as we already know, were taken from their parents as infants and raised in indoctrination farms, so they may arrive pure at the marking ceremony at 14. In this post-apocalyptic world, access to the divine is considered a disease, and the relationship with God has been officially replaced. The classroom is not an educational space, it is a factory of souls, where history itself has been rewritten. The teacher retells, or rather distorts the past, claiming that Uriel was not a compassionate messenger, but a fallen angel who descended to deceive humanity 2,000 years ago, and that it was their savior, Dr. Jeff Ernstmann, who prevented him from taking over the world. This seemingly small alteration does more than rewrite history. It rewrites the very roles of good and evil in the collective conscience, because, if we think about it, it fits their narrative. A being beyond human comprehension, held captive for 2 millennia, surely cannot be good, right? As we listen to this lesson, if we can even call it that, something extraordinary happens. The sound of a woman crying begins to echo through the classroom. Then behind the hero, a sacred figure manifests. Her identity is unclear. On one hand, she could be the Virgin Mary, as we hear her refer to the hero as child of mine, and given that Mary is regarded as the mother of all mothers, the connection would make sense. However, if we look closer, she may also be Saint Irene of Thessalonica, and the parallels become even stronger, not only in appearance, but in meaning. Saint Irene was a Christian martyr of the 4th century, venerated especially in the Eastern Orthodox tradition. Her name means peace, a divine peace born from truth, faith, and resistance against evil. Irene is remembered for refusing to renounce her faith even when the Roman Empire offered her power and protection in exchange for abandoning God. Instead, she resisted, and that resistance led to her martyrdom. In other words, Irene embodies the exact opposite of what this new world order is trying to impose. She is the protector of the innocent and the persecuted, a final echo of the sacred in a world that has rejected the sacred. Anyway, whoever this figure truly is, one thing is clear. True faith is trying to break through a world built to silence it. Returning to the episode, since the hero is experiencing what are known as saintly voices, he follows protocol and visits the priest. But what we find is not a man of faith. It is an agent of the system, a guardian of the mark. He tells the boy, with a paternal tone, that these visions are normal in those who have not yet been marked. Then he checks that the boy intends to receive the mark and records his birthday. And this matters, because he is about to turn 14, the age of the final seal. The priest even suggests that Babylon the Great may visit him before the day arrives, the queen of this new world order. But just as the priest is finishing his sentence, the sacred figure manifests again. And with a sorrowful voice, she pleads with the last hope of this world not to listen, not to believe their words, not to fall for the deception. It is the perfect countercommand to the propaganda from the beginning. The episode places two incompatible voices in conflict over the same ear, the regime demanding obedience until the mark, and grace imploring resistance to the lie. Finally, the sacred figure begins to distort, as if some unseen force is trying to erase her, trying to prevent her message from reaching him. Unlike the previous episode, which showed us the world after the apocalypse, fully rebuilt under a new order, this chapter forces us to look back. It takes us to a moment before the collapse, when something resembling a society still existed. The opening scene is deeply unsettling. Barachiel, wandering outside the laboratory, alone and unsupervised, moving through the human world. What's strange is that he isn't causing chaos. He isn't following orders. He's simply watching two children play. And then, with an almost childlike awkwardness, he asks,
"May I play too?"
This line is far more significant than it seems. Barachiel had been introduced to us as a tool, a project, a symbol of scientific progress pushed beyond any moral boundary. He was not designed to understand the human world, and yet he longs for it. He doesn't fully grasp the difference between himself and others, but he feels it. He feels the distance. He feels the isolation. His mind is not shaped like that of an adult, nor like that of a celestial being. It's closer to that of a child who is realizing for the first time that the other exists. He is a being created, not born, desperately trying to understand who he is. And that need, the need to belong, becomes the most dangerous of all when no one is willing to answer it. The scene cuts abruptly to a special report on national news, once again hosted by Hunter Abacus. He tries to maintain composure, as he announces that the second Tower of Babel is being heavily criticized, not for ethical reasons, not for religious ones, but because Dr. Jeff Ernstman's scientific program appears to have lost control of one of its most prized creations. Barachiel has escaped. The scene shifts again. Deep inside the second Tower of Babel, we witness one of the most violent moments in the entire series. Here it is.
Why did you not do it?
I am sorry, I cannot.
You don't belong there.
You cannot. Are you not an angel?
I do not belong.
You are no human. Your place is in the laboratory.
That's right. You are a mutt, not an angel.
I just want friends.
Friends? You?
But you're a failure. Failures don't deserve friends.
to me. And it can be ill.
What we hear isn't a conversation, it's punishment, an emotional execution. What we hear are not words, but blows. Every sentence lands like a hammer. Every shard of shattering glass marks the moment something inside Barachiel breaks. They remind him that he is not human, that he does not belong in the world outside, that his existence is a mistake, a failure. And when Barachiel, voice trembling, says that he just wants friends, the response is an absolute rejection. Cruel, dehumanizing, final. This is the breaking point. This scene is the thematic core of the entire episode. Barachiel was not created to feel alive. He was created to obey. And every time he reaches toward the world hits back. The screen cuts to black. Then text appears. You are no angel. You are no human. Do you want to be one? They will be so proud. The voice belongs to an entity identified as Babel 1, speaking directly to Barachiel. We do not yet know its nature or its intentions. We can only wait for the series to reveal more. And yet, one question remains. Considering Barachiel was the one who manipulated the President of the United States and set in motion the war that ended the world, what if he acted on his own? Not under influence, not under orders, but out of vengeance, born from this moment of emotional annihilation. The rage of a child who only wanted to belong. A child who, 2,000 years later, will beg our hero to let him tear the skin from his bones and wear it, just to look, even a little, like a human. Finally, we arrive at the most recent episode available to date. It opens, once again, with a broadcast of the most iconic program of this new world, the Babylon Office Hours, hosted, of course, by Tucker Wormwood. What we're shown is grotesque. At the center of the screen, we see one of the Angel Corps, crucified on a structure woven entirely out of human faces, fused together into a pillar of agony. Wormwood welcomes us with his usual tone, polite, mocking, and cruel all at once. With unsettling casualness, he informs us that Babylon the Great will not be appearing in today's broadcast. The reason, however, matters far less than what comes next. Wormwood explains that what we are witnessing is a commemoration. 1,000 years have passed since an event the broadcast calls the Great Revolt. A millennium ago, the Angel Corps, steel automatons fueled by the living energy of Uriel, rose up against the authority of Babylon the Great, an act of rebellion which, as we can infer, failed. Was it guided by the Archangel himself, or did another divine figure intervene? For now, we do not have the answer. Suddenly, the scene shifts. We see the hero, praying in secret. He is no longer just a confused child. There is awareness in him now, a quiet understanding that the world he was born into is built on a lie, even if he still doesn't know what to do with that truth. And once again, the Virgin appears. She asks him to leave his home and begin a journey toward a place not yet revealed to him, a place where he will show him the path. This is a direct reflection of God's call to Abraham in Genesis. But our hero is not ready, not yet. He admits it. He feels inadequate, too weak, too wrong to be the one who is meant to do anything of importance. He does not believe himself to be chosen. The Virgin corrects him gently, restoring what true faith actually is. She reminds him that when Christ hung on the cross, when the pain was so absolute that breathing itself was agony, the faces of every child of God passed before his eyes, and among those faces was his. This moment is crucial, because here, the hero understands something no one in his world had ever told him. You were loved before you were born. Your life has value, not because the system grants it to you, but because God had already seen you. And that is the kind of truth that can start a real revolution. At last, Uriel appears. As we have come to expect, his body is destroyed. His face resembles a shattered mask more than the radiant angel he once was, but his message remains unmistakably clear. The wages of sin is death, but through him you may yet be reborn. Every act has a price. Every corruption has an end. But even in death, the possibility of rebirth still remains. And so, at long last, the hero's arc begins. So, what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I love reading them. If you want more videos like this, don't forget to support this one as much as possible and share it with as many people as you can. Also, make sure to follow me on my other social media platforms where I post exclusive content you won't find here on YouTube. And most importantly, a massive shout out to the channel members. Seriously, thank you all so much. If you'd like to become a member, just click the join button next to the subscribe button to unlock tons of perks and exclusive emojis while supporting me. If you're interested, join in. I'll be forever grateful. And remember, this video was made by a cat and cats can't talk. Thanks for watching, take care, and see you soon.